Beware Maria. Maria talks about music, about education, about psychology and art, about sex and gender roles, about meaning and purpose, about things that are fun or interesting and can relate to each other. Maria has conversations with herself and with others, and she finds it a bit odd to talk about herself in the third person. Just beware and think about it. I have been thinking a lot about risk lately because I'm contemplating doing something in my life, introducing some change that would mean a little bit of risk. And as I think of risk, I'm going to play to you a song that's called Poker Face by City Rain because I think it's perfect for what it comes today. When considering a risky option in my life, I would go to all my friends for feedback on my idea. We would brainstorm together and they would give me their opinion and their advice. However, I recently met a new friend. Someone from whom I didn't know a lot, but we decided to meet again for a chat and a walk. It was only then that I learned that I was walking with a poker player. Stuart, how many chances would I have to meet a poker player just when I want to discuss risk? Hi, Stuart.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for turning up. Are you ready for a number of questions?
Yeah, sure. I'm always happy to talk about myself, I guess.
Stuart, how does one become a professional poker player, or more specifically, you?
I was always into games as a child. I played lots of other card games and board games and war games, and it gradually progressed to the point where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. So poker is one of the most profitable things you can do with the gaming sorts of things. So like I play lots of other games, but they're not enough to make a living off in the same way. So poker is the most profitable game. Like there are big tournaments and lots of little tournaments all over the world. And you can do lots of online play and all kinds of things like that. So it all gradually progressed up. I played these other games and I moved up. This is the one where the money is. So like obviously it's a balance between enjoyment and profit. So like you need to make a living doing something. I do make money playing other games as well, but poker is the most reasonable for this.
I was very surprised because I had no idea how this works. So when Stuart started to explain that he was making his living playing poker, at the beginning I thought it was like chess, like you play, you compete or something like that. And then he said, no, there's actually real money that you're playing. So yeah, I was quite ignorant. Is there like a whole world of games that mainstream people are not aware of? Or is it just me?
I don't know. Maybe it's hard for me.
It's just me. I'm totally.
I mean, to be honest, I think most people know that poker is played for money, but
Mhm.
I don't. It's hard to know what people outside your sphere of interest
Yeah.
do and don't know.
Mhm.
There,
Yeah,
there are,
I just didn't imagine that it would be like something that you can make your living from, even if there's money in it, if that makes sense.
sure.
Uh-huh.
I think they're sort of fringe things. You can make money doing most things if you're really good at them. And like
Uh-huh.
poker's
Mhm.
relatively mainstream. You see it in TV programs and movies quite a lot. People playing big stakes and things like that. Like
Mhm.
you can make your money doing sports betting, like betting on horse races and stuff, if
Mhm.
you know exactly what you're doing. Like
Mm.
most people can't, but it's definitely possible to do any sort of make your living making most types of gambling, depending on how exactly they work. So, like poker is one of the most mainstream ones, but you
Mm.
mentioned chess. Chess is obviously not gambling, but it's still a game that people can make money off. The,
Yeah.
the world champion of chess does make money.
Mhm. And the same that happens in chess. Are they people you admire in the world of games?
Um, to a degree, like there will be definitely people I respect. I'm not sure I'd say admire because but it's just a game. It's not like if someone cures cancer or whatever, they've done something really impressive, or they cure any disease or any sort of societal advancement. But if someone just makes money doing something, I don't think it really is something particularly admirable. In the same way, if some big CEO runs a company and makes lots of money selling something, I don't admire that person because like they just made lots of money. That's not.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, yeah. So, does it not make you ever freak out or be nervous? How do you manage if you're playing big amount of money? And I have no idea what the average poker player would be, what we're talking about. Is there an amount of nervousness or anxiety, or you are very cool about it and you know what you do and you know how do you manage your risk?
Uh, a bit, but I think in general my temperament is pretty good for that kind of thing. Like I don't get too bothered if I win or lose, which is definitely to a degree what you want. Like it
Yeah.
goes both ways. Sort of a desire to win pushes people forward, but when you're playing for thousands of dollars, you have to not be thinking about that. You have to just think about the game you're playing and not, oh, I've made a mistake here. I've lost loads of money. This is really upsetting because that's just inevitably going to happen. Any competitive game where you're playing versus other people, especially in any sort of tournament structure, you're almost always going to end with losing because,
Yeah.
like, unless you win, unless you come first in whatever you're doing, you're going to have lost, get knocked into second or fourth or whatever, and then you're like, oh, I've lost, and like only one person gets to win, and most of the time it's not going to be you, so you have to be able to handle that.
That sounds very rational, but I imagine that, I mean, managing that, so it will be easier for some people than for other people.
Yes,
Have you seen people playing and getting really out of it?
oh yes, definitely. There's lots of people who get upset. Like that's kind of what it's fine to be upset when you're eliminated, but when you're still involved in the game, like people lose half their chips and they're like, oh, I got so unlucky. And they're right, they did get really unlucky. And then they get really upset and play really badly and lose all the rest of their chips. And it's like, you need to not do that. You need to have the temperament that says you can afford a setback and get unlucky because that's just how the game works. There's a decent amount of randomness. You just need to mitigate that, and like not getting upset and losing all your money because you're upset is pretty important.
Well, yes, or the opposite, no? So how does it feel if you win completely?
It feels good. I think again, like I'm not that bothered by it. So
That's great.
when I win some big event, I don't feel like, oh, this is the best thing ever. It's amazing.
Uh-huh.
I mean, other people feel differently, but in general, this is useful for the overall because it doesn't help you being really happy about winning.
So it looks like this is like the right type of personality to be able to play that so that you don't get that bothered. Otherwise, you're going to have always a lot of ups and downs about winning and losing.
Yes, it's one of the things like you need the ability to play the game, but you also need the temperament to be able to be not get too upset when you lose. You also need to be able to manage your money and stuff. And like again, when you lose a bunch of money, you have to be like, this is fine. I've just keep going and not not try and win it back immediately because you've got to get it back. Just sometimes you're going to win and sometimes you're going to lose.
Yeah. For how long have you been doing this seriously? Like you're making your life with it.
Oh, pretty much my entire life now. So
Your
more than
entire
20.
life
Yeah.
since you were 1 year.
Well, no, I mean, since I was an adult.
Since adulthood.
Yeah, so more than 20 years now.
Uh-huh. What other games you play then? Because you said you play other things.
I play more casually. I play like board games and war game stuff, but I play Magic the Gathering and other trading card games that have reasonable prizes. Like these events still have thousands of dollars in prize money. It's just not the literal millions that poker has.
I see. But they're not in person, or there is something in person?
They used to mostly be in person, but with COVID and stuff, I now mostly play stuff online.
I see. So do you now play anything at all in the way that you get to see people?
Not recently, but I probably will again. I'll probably go to some stuff in the future, but I quite like
don't
playing.
miss it.
Not particularly. Like it was, you go to the airport and you fly to another country, and then you go to a convention center, which is quite often in some rundown industrial district, and then you play for 2-3 days, and then you come home and go through the airport again. It's like you could see the country, but it costs you a bunch of money, and like I'm not that interested in travel, so it costs a lot of money to fly places and get hotels compared to staying at home.
So you're talking about it like it is a job, like a proper job, something that sometimes is tedious, but do you still enjoy it?
Yeah, I do enjoy it. Like, but poker is fine. Like, I prefer other games, but I enjoy playing poker.
But what's your favorite one then?
Probably the one I mentioned, Magic the Gathering. Like, it's a different card game.
Never heard about it. What kind of cards do you use? Normal?
No.
No, different cards.
No, it's different cards. It's a collectible card game. So they have their own cards.
I see.
So it's a game. It's been going for quite a while. Obviously not as long as poker, but it's like coming up on its 30th anniversary. So
I had an experience watching people play with cards, but I mean, this description is coming from someone who is totally ignorant from it. So maybe you can picture what it is. I was in New York, and it was a jazz place, quite underground, very big, where very good orchestras would play. And they had a section for orchestra playing, like jazz band. And the other section, there was a lot of people playing cards. And there was like cards with figures of, I mean, I never understood what that was, but apparently it was something very popular, and it was like role play. Yes, like I don't know, it was like warriors or something in the cards, figures or something that got very popular. And this was in about probably 15 years ago. And I was surprised that there was this combination of a very good place for jazz, and part was jazz and part was people playing cards. And those cards, which I will never recognize or be able to say what that was.
I mean, there are lots of different decks of cards. Like you can play poker like a normal deck of cards with a particularly ornate deck of cards. Obviously, you have King, Queen, Jack, and like you can have more complicated versions of the basic cards. And like even when I say poker, I kind of mean Texas Hold'em. There are lots of different poker style games. Like people play bridge or stuff like that. There are a lot of different card games and a lot of different potential things that people. It's an easy game to play. What various card games you have a deck of cards. You sit down in the hotel lobby or jazz bar apparently and play cards. And it's not.
Wow.
And like lots of people like to gamble. That's generally.
I see. Do you play every day?
No, not every day.
No. How often do you play?
It depends. Like, I probably play poker maybe 10 to 15 hours a week and play various other games more, but it depends. Like, I don't need that much money, so I don't do it that much.
Wow. So after all these years, well, a number of years playing games and poker and other things, do you think there is any life lessons that you have learned from it that you take? If you stop playing, you say, this is the lesson that I have learned from doing this?
I mean, yes, I guess so. I guess I need to explain this.
Great.
It's sort of complicated, but sort of not. Okay, so I think people in general are too results orientated with how things work. They do something and it either works or they don't, and then they assume that because it either worked or it didn't, it was correct. But like card games teach you that there's always a chance of things going wrong. It's like if you get in your car and don't put on your seatbelt and you drive to somewhere. Obviously, you've made a mistake by not putting on your seatbelt because that's dangerous. But most of the time, you're going to be fine. But it's a pretty basic thing. It's like you should have put on your seatbelt; it was dangerous. But people do more complicated things, like they take a big risk and it pays off, and they think, "Oh, that's a great idea. I got away with it." And it's like, yeah, but you still shouldn't have done that. And like, obviously, you should take some risks in life, but you should sort of carefully weigh up the odds and like you're better off thinking about working out what the risks are than looking back on past experience. Maybe not past experience of people overall, but of yourself. Like people are really bad at judging how dangerous something is or whether it was a good idea. So like you need to try and disconnect the risk from the result. Because like often in poker, you will be winning or losing. You'll win 2/3 of the time and lose a third of the time. But like that's a huge range. Like you could do it 10 times in a row and lose all of them, and it wouldn't be that unlikely. But then in poker, what you do is you just do it again. You do exactly the same thing. You wouldn't care you'd lost 10 times in a row because you knew you were ahead. You understood the game to that degree. And life is sort of the same. It's more complicated to know where you are. But if you're doing a good thing and it keeps not working, you can evaluate whether you've made a mistake. But sometimes you won't have made a mistake and you just have to keep trying. And like I sort of try to live my life by that. It's like just because things don't work out doesn't mean they won't work out in the future.
That makes so much sense. I like that. Not because you try and you didn't get it doesn't mean you will never get it. Yeah. So that's the way you handle risk.
Yes, it's like a calculated, and like it's not just lots of people who play poker in the past have moved on to things like financial services, like stockbrokers or selling insurance or something like that. And there's a lot of overlap in the more commercial sectors where, like with insurance, you sell insurance, the insurance company sells insurance to everyone. They know some of them will have claims and some of them won't, and they make money overall. And like they need to hedge against various risks, but they know it doesn't matter if you have an accident because other people won't have an accident, so they can do it. They spread the risk out.
Wow, that's interesting. Do you think that what you're doing now is a stepping stone towards somewhere, or do you feel that this is the place where you're comfortable and you would like to remain, or do you maybe don't know?
I'm probably going to remain where I am, but it's possible I'll move on to something else. It would depend if my life changed and I needed to earn more money or something like that. It's mostly a case of if things changed and I needed more for some reason, I might have to think about that. But currently I don't, so I'm not particularly considering it.
Okay. So one of the stereotypes of games and playing and kind of things that you would see in movie is intuition and feelings and all that kind of things. I would like to know what's your take. Do you believe in trusting your intuition, or are you totally rational when you play? Depends also what your definition and understanding of intuition is, but we may not need to get there now.
I think you should, in general, trust your intuition. Your mind picks up all kinds of things subconsciously.
Yeah.
If you have a strong feeling that someone they've got a really good hand, or they're going to do something bad or whatever, you should trust it, because it's not just coming from nowhere. Your mind will pick things up. You won't always be right, but it's coming from somewhere. It's not
I do believe that kind of understanding of what intuition is, like not like something mysterious and magical, but actually something that we're picking up, even if we cannot really explain it, but our brain is picking up a lot more of what we rationally know. And body language and things that are happening around, and how someone or ourselves are relating to what is around. So Yeah, I.
You definitely get that feeling with people sometimes. Sometimes you don't like them or you do like them, and you're not quite sure why.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of thing where sometimes it's going to be wrong and you'll get to know them better, but
Mm,
most of the time, your first impression is fairly accurate. And it's
mm,
not necessarily what they say or do, it's a bit just how they act and things.
mm,
I mean, you have to be a bit careful because you can, to a degree, manipulate that. Like, you deliberately, like, obviously, confidence tricksters or someone trying to run a scam or something will deliberately try to be more friendly. That they'll act in a way it's like, oh, we're really good friends, or
mm.
act like
Yeah.
sort of over friendly and ask you for things and be like, oh, please give me a hand with this. And it's like you have to be careful not to get drawn in. But if people aren't deliberately manipulating you,
Mm.
generally you can trust the impressions you get off what they do.
So you trust yourself in that
Yeah.
with people. Do you think being good with people and good with games is something that is related?
Uh, to a degree, there's like two halves to these sort of games. There's the mechanical aspect of the game where you have to know, like, there are 52 cards in the deck and there are four different colors and there's this and that. What the chance of drawing the ace of spades is 3% or whatever, and that's all purely mechanical. You know all the answers, but generally speaking, the games are simple enough that that's not enough to actually beat people. You need some amount of what are people doing? They're doing it for a reason. Like it's like you see in TV programs and movies where people like I don't know when they're bluffing they eat a chip or something. It's like
Oh,
people generally don't do that. It's a bit over the top, but a more subtle thing people do act like that, and you definitely use that in real life where people, in a really basic way, if someone leans in when they're talking to you, they're interested in the conversation. If they
mm,
lean further back, they're generally maybe threatened or less interested. Obviously, it depends a lot
mm,
on their personality type, but that's super.
mm.
Or even if you're talking to someone and they pull out their phone and start looking at it, they're not very interested in talking to you, and that's super basic. But you can still pick up on those sorts of things. There's plenty of body language and
I really got curious about what you said about the chip. What is that? If they are bluffing, they eat a chip?
I
What's
think
that?
like food, as in you see this.
Really?
Well, I mean, you see
I
this in
never knew
TV.
that.
You see it in TV programs and movies where they'll have some really obvious indication they're bluffing, like they'll eat something, or they'll tip their hat, or they'll rub the back of their hand. Because
Mm,
obviously, this is a visual medium. You can't have anything too subtle. What you want is to have the audience figure out what the main character is figuring out that they're bluffing and think they're, oh, I'm really clever. I'm figuring it out too. So they generally exaggerate whatever and make it really obvious. It's sort of it's a TV or movie thing. It's not really a bad thing, but you exaggerate things to make it easier for the audience to see them.
wow, that's interesting. And I because I don't have a television, I don't watch it. That's why I'm a bit out of practice in that. What do you think, Stuart, are the skills that a professional gamer needs? If you find someone who says, I want to be a
Yeah.
professional gamer.
Okay. So they need a they need to be good at whatever game they want to play. Like that's a fairly basic thing, but like they need to actually be good as opposed to just think they're good. Like you can play these games for a while, but it's like if you say I want to play poker for a living, I'd ask, okay, so what stakes do you play at, and how much money have you made so far? And the answer
Mm,
is, oh, I don't know. It's like, well, you need to start tracking that so you actually know if you're making money or you're losing it. Because it's like, I won $100 this day is totally meaningless. I want to know how much money you made over the course of a month. Because
mm,
like people are pretty bad at remembering. They remember when they win and forget when they lose.
mm,
And then in a similar way, you need the right temperament. You need I've won 100 today, I've lost 100 tomorrow, and I won 100, and I've won 100. And you're just like, you're fine with that. You're not bothered. Some days you don't make any money or lose money. And
mm,
like, there's also a lot of different ways you could do it. Like this poker is like pretty pure win
mm,
money, do stuff. But like, there are plenty of games that don't have money attached, but you could stream them. There are plenty of people make a living, like some of the most highly played entertainers in the world now are streamers who stream them playing games or something like that.
mm.
And they're basically putting on a show. They're performing. The game doesn't really matter. It's the performance that matters. And you definitely could do that. And you need to work out what type of service you're providing. Like are you directly winning tournaments or whatever and making money, or are you streaming and showing off your cool tricks or whatever? That's two fairly different things.
Did you ever stream?
No. It's something I know about in theory rather than practice. Like, I mean, people generally don't stream poker because it's not that interesting to watch. This is the sort of problem. You need a game that's interesting to watch, and mostly those games don't have money attached to them. And they do a bit, but not the games I play.
Okay. If you can tell, what is the biggest amount you ever lost in one go that you can remember?
I probably lost like 5,000
in one go.
Yeah.
Wow. And the biggest?
I
mean, the biggest that you won? I mean.
Yeah, 10,000 probably. Yeah, I won 10,000 a few times.
But still, you look, and the tone of your voice is like you're unbothered about it. It's like
no, it's not.
So, do you think that the expression "poker face" has anything to do with that kind of temperament that a player has to be tempered in the maybe personality, not to take it too bad or too good, and be able to exercise some kind of continence?
To a degree, like the poker face is a bit overused.
It's a terrible expression, I know, but I just put it forward to see.
Yeah, I mean,
think about it.
It means something slightly different to what people think it means. It doesn't mean no expression at all. It means not showing what your expression means. Like, if you're unhappy and you look happy, that is having a poker face. If you look like you're having a good time, sort of joking around and stuff, but you're actually upset because you lost, as long as you conceal what you're actually feeling, it's kind of fine. Like you just want the other people not to be able to work out whether you're winning or losing based on your expression. It doesn't need to be totally stone-faced blank.
Yeah.
That's how some people do it, but you can do other things. You just need to not reveal information about your play.
Wow, that sounds very difficult for me. Is that something one needs to learn or rehearse, or you just like that and that's it?
I mean, it depends. It depends on what person you are. Also, like if you play things online, it doesn't really matter. They can't see your face online, so you don't need to. You can act however you want. It only matters for like in-person games. And yeah, like you need to conceal it to a degree, but like it's just practice. Like after a while, it becomes not a problem.
Did you have teachers, or you learned on your own?
Sort of. Like I had people I played games with, and like we would play together. I didn't have a direct teacher, but I had people I played with and got better, and they got better, and like you help each other. You work together.
What's in summary, what's for you the best about the profession that you have chosen? Why do you do it?
I think it's the flexibility. Like I make my own hours. I can do as much as I want. Like it pays quite well for that sort of thing. I don't need to work a normal job where I'm not going to enjoy it. I can live my life as I see fit, which is definitely like helpful. Like I don't want to work in an office. It's not me. So yeah, like I guess flexibility is what I value most.
Thank you very much, Stuart. It's been a pleasure having you today, and it was a most interesting conversation. I really enjoyed learning more about what you do, and I find it really fascinating.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for having me.
In the end, after getting the advice and consulting many of my friends, I have decided not to go for that risky option this time. I'm going to stay put for now, but how good is to have good friends that I can rely on and get feedback from. And now, after chatting with Stuart, I have learned one more thing, and this is poker face. That poker face doesn't mean to have an unexpressive face, but to not let know your real feelings and You must have a good reason for having a poker face at some point. It can be useful. How is your poker face? I'm sure we all need a poker face in some risky moments. Have a good week.